So do I need, for something like
We'll leave that,
Yeah.
and preventative.
Second, then, or third, it's one of the, I'm like, oh, I think it was generated on it, should have been this one.
Because of that.
Here's all that. Please, I don't know, this one, I think it was down on the computer and it's okay, you should. This one, never.
Oh, it's usually true.
I was on there.
Video survey. Everything that's the way it is.
I really $50,000 in money. And goes to me.
Whoa.
So I can get that money. I have to start it.
It's okay.
Yeah,
legit.
Agreement for me, because we were all trying to get this survey to communicate with us. And yeah, so, two of the ones that I got asked if they could really worked out 6 months. When they, I think we met, I was complaining about the one. That they were, but my house is on the Ridge Road. Down there, it's one of the county street.
You know.
But you got here.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. And I actually one by picture when people after. Well, there's something. This is just crazy going on. Oh. Yeah, and I. Names. But that's small, because I don't know, because we just need to learn, which will be actually more available. So, this is an sure drive for this. You know, so that's. Well, he says he didn't, that's true. After.
I understand.
Then about 15 months later, she says, we had a deeper discussion on this, and he did possibly, it was this one was sister on the LCA. Okay. I understand. What's going on in his court, and this is whatever the home faces. That it's out, takes the one money and then.
Okay, why?
We would run that if it's completely. Better when it comes to our emotions. I do that one good. Not thing for personality, because the crazy companies out. But he doesn't get on spring with me or try to phone that I'm with person anymore. So I think
Welcome. Welcome, everyone. Are we broadcasting or recording? We are recording and broadcasting, all right. Nobody's on, but.
Lights are on, it's very nice.
Let's just take a moment to go around and see how we're showing up today. And if there's anything that the rest of us can do to make your time here more enjoyable and conducive to our group efforts. Do you want to move first?
Sure. Jan, if you don't know me, I'm doing good. Getting more involved in other groups and stuff like that, so I'm going to say, better watch out, you don't get too much on your plate. But I'm doing good tonight.
I'm Dawn Kenyon, city councilor, and also having a very good day, busy. 2 clients and this and lunch right here. It's all good.
Jerry, on the advisory council, citizen.
I've had a day on here.
Okay. That's funny.
Trudy Hammond, I have a few other committees that I serve on. I applied for board of director position on a pro bono. Which is free medical care for homeless animals. So on my advocacy and my role is animal. So I have a program that a nonprofit that I developed, and I really think that we can integrate some more protection for the animals through our city ordinances and stuff.
Chris Winchester, and today is a good day. Following a good day yesterday, so I'm on a roll.
I'm your city administrator, yeah, I've had a day.
And they've got the adjectives.
Patty Holston, I'm the Sonoma Library Board, and everyone said it was very good. Today was just a day.
Sarah Alton's Cove, I work here locally as executive director for Southbound Solutions, and a busy day today, we are in grant season, so it means a lot of writing and balancing a lot of projects, but what I want to share with you guys tonight, this is my last meeting, for this committee. I'm moving not far, like a mile, but enough to be no longer on this committee, because I'll be out of city limits, so first time in 20-something years, so, well, I'll have to step down after this meeting, but you guys are in good hands. I'm sure I'll try and keep tabs when drafts come out and stuff. So. Yeah.
And would you be available to give us any feedback on?
Yeah, I'm definitely happy to help out, but yeah, I won't even be a voter on your final product.
Right.
So yeah, it's not so. It'll be a first in a long time I haven't been a voter. Maybe when I was in Washington DC,
Oh.
for the 3 years that I was not.
And I'm happy with that. And if hurt my shoulder or neck, so if I don't quite turn to you, it's I'll be turning with my eyes and just know that I value your being here. So Sarah, given that you're not going to be on the commission any longer, you will need to pick someone else who's comfortable doing the notes.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm happy to jump in.
All right, thank you. Does anyone want to volunteer for that?
Maybe we should make it a precondition to approving the.
Usually I just come back volunteer. I think that would be a great thing to consider for, how you've been talking about employment students. So the government class have to pick up community engagement hours.
Okay.
Think about. Kaylee used to philosophy to know the teacher.
You don't want me anywhere near technology.
Okay.
I back off on that.
Got Sue.
Handwriting. And if there's a key point and somebody directs me, you take it. I'll take that key.
They take a lot of notes.
They do this the whole time.
You good at it. And they crazy amount of information in there. And it's wonderful, because you can go back and read.
Got the recordings.
It's Sue.
Hi, Sue.
Can you hear us okay, Sue?
We don't hear you.
You're muted.
Now you can hear me, huh?
Yeah.
Okay,
Can you
gotcha.
hear us, though?
Yeah, I can hear you fine too.
Didn't hear your announcement, I don't think.
Yeah, Sue, I was just saying, I'm gonna be stepping down off this committee because we're moving out of Oak Ridge. So I'm no longer eligible, so hopefully by the next meeting will be moved. Yeah.
But I wonder if you might consider looking at kind of the final product.
Yeah.
So that.
Maybe I'll even make it some meetings, I need to.
So we are needing Sue to choose someone else to take notes.
Ah.
Because that's a role that Sarah has been doing. Is that something that you would want to volunteer to do?
that is something that I specifically wouldn't like to volunteer to do. If I would be willing to share that duty with somebody else and take it on part-time, but I don't want to do that with every meeting. And yeah, I find it hard to follow along while we do that. And yeah, it's just kind of not my bag. But I'd be happy to share the load if somebody wants to share it with me.
Kathy, is that something you would like to share a little bit?
Well, I've been hesitant to say anything because I'm not trying to run the commission yet, so. But I would be.
It was-
And would the person doing it need to know your system?
It's Matt's and
Yeah, I can walk them through, yeah.
yeah, sure. I've been trying, so he jumps in at times and fills in where I have things.
We have a text of the city charter. And then below the text of each section of the city charter, there's a table on a Google Doc. With the left-hand section, so we chose to go through the charter in 2 different phases. The first phase, we're going through and we're asking questions of what does this section mean? What are the implications of this section? And so the left-hand column of each table is, what is the question? And then the right-hand column of each table is our attempts to answer the question or leads to answer the question, or people saying, hey, here's the section that I'll follow up on. That way we have that record of here's the question, and also the right-hand section can be if people are musing on, well, I think it might have this implication. Then that would go in that right-hand column as well. That way, the second round, when we go through the charter again, we'll be much more familiar with what's in place. And the second time through is when we'll actually be able to make suggestions of, I would like to see this in the charter. I think it should be changed this way. Sometimes when people jump in and we're all eager to make suggestions or make improvements, we're not necessarily familiar with what's there. So that's the 2-part cycle. The first part of the cycle is also an opportunity to structure your questions, to bring on board other people to think along the lines that you're thinking of, oh, there's this difference that, or there's this deficit that I keep noticing that keeps showing up in the questions. Boy, wouldn't it be nice for us to do something about that? So it's also an opportunity to carefully word your questions to bring about alignment to something you will want to suggest. So you two are willing to share that?
I'm always good.
Okay, to do that? To share that?
Some assistance when necessary, like in your meetings.
All right, sounds great.
Because that is, and I agree with.
Thank you. All right, so we need to take a look at your application. And so far, the way that this has worked is that everyone in the community who's been really interested in serving on this commission, who doesn't have any massively disqualifying aspects, which is so far no one, has been allowed to serve on the commission. So do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself? We all received your application.
Okay,
And then,
I've been here since 2014. I was appointed as city councilor. Served for a few months. I was elected as a city councilor, and was elected as mayor, and resigned as mayor last year. I intimately can be able to see why a charter is so important to be clear. That there are some things that we shouldn't have to ferret out and figure out. They should be clear enough. Some of it is just archaic, some of it is just not worded the way it should be, and maybe there are other things that we need to change or consider asking for you also. I don't have any preconceived ideas about, if you said to me, what would you like changed, I would say, I don't know. I really don't. I do know other than bad language, I would like to have changed, but it's clear. And we don't have to worry ourselves over that. Other than that, I've been busy redoing my house, which I bought. And I'm about to put an addition on it, so I'll be involved in that. I'm enjoying retirement and heading to Greece next year, doing it for another probably month or so. It's a long time, and I enjoy doing that, and just take care of the dog. Oh, and the other big thing in my life is my brother now lives in Oak Ridge, and that's delightful. Having never lived in the same town as him since he was 5 and I was 21. So I just-
Wonderful. So. Would anyone like to make a motion that you can, to receive Kathy onto our commission?
So moved.
Any second?
Second, sorry.
Jan.
You gave up note taking already.
I know.
And. Everyone in favor, aye.
I,
Welcome to the group. And. One other note is in terms of. That second time through, that second cycle. We're going to be, this is something in the first meeting of, let's try to do this sociocratically, meaning we're gonna be aiming for consent. So if someone makes a suggestion, we're gonna keep working on wording it until those of us on the commission say, hey, that sounds good enough for now and safe enough to try. Not, hey, a majority thinks that that's a good idea, and sorry, there's a minority left off. That is a difference in approach. It's not the same as consensus. We're not saying, hey, all of us think this is a good idea. We're saying that, hey, none of us has a reasoned and paramount objection to why that shouldn't be the case. So we can, it's within our range of tolerance. Not within our range of exuberance. And that's a different way of going about the modifications. But that's how we're playing. All right. So I believe we are on chapter 4. Is that what other people have as well?
I would like to make a suggestion, but if everyone's okay with it, can we go through and discuss this first? This is the Federal Review Subcommittee operating guidelines that the administration committee created for us to review here. Have a few of them? Let's step up for a second. I scared of smoke and my sweat smells. I just can't handle it. Is there a shared drive or something that we have? Yes. We have to do this. No, to the stretch. Okay. Now, James can probably add her onto that thread drive, which you can have also.
I don't control,
Oh, you're not gonna or
I'm not very good at doing it, but also I don't think I have control of this because it's not what is city. Controlled.
It does say call with the owner,
yeah,
but you know, sometimes, let me see if I can just do it right here, sometimes, it's left open for sharing permissions.
She's still here though. I can.
Okay, sure. My fault, yeah. Yeah, okay, I can add, it must be open, so we can. You'll get an email, you have to the email received. Right? Oh, it did. Yeah. Oh, well, that was easy. I know. Thank you. So I reviewed this when you emailed it out, and I thought it looked really good. I think this is great to just have in writing and clearly, communicate the process for when you guys move through your next steps for moving on your recommendations for them to go to the ballot. So, yeah, I didn't, when I read it, I didn't think of anything that it needed. It's short and sweet, talks about how many people and then process for sending along information. So it's good to have.
Yeah, it was awesome at home. I did look at it. Have we missed anything on it? That's my question. I think we've kind of been providing by now. So far, yeah, that's pretty much the idea behind this, that this is what's been going on, the concerns that people had shown, and then we just take declaration of that. And we discussed a lot on whether or not something should be limited to any time period, and it's like, let's just not even go there. Let's just work in a reasonable amount. Maybe kind of a slow, smooth going with it for all comprehension, so. You realize how the was drink on the glass, that's still in there.
All right, so has everyone had a chance to finish reviewing this? Yes. Everyone comfortable with this? Yes.
The only difference I noticed from this and the first one that we saw to come onto this committee is this says we'll meet maybe more than once a month.
That's new. That's how
Once we talked about it and we were, maybe even we did it at one time. I don't remember, did we?
We may have at the very beginning,
Yeah.
but yeah, that,
Just like it kind of open to the committee to decide.
Sometimes charters will have your, include the process for the meeting. And, it was just laid out here in the notes, I think it's a great approach to take. I don't know if you guys want to commit to that meeting process necessarily, it is somewhat on that. So, I mean, there is the potential, that you guys could get stuck at a certain point. And you wouldn't be eligible to this, to whether it's the majority vote or consensus vote or all those things. But, I think, how we do it, but it's just something that.
appreciate it. And with these are operating guidelines, we could elect to meet more often if we choose to at some point.
You guys love to change them too, so you didn't ask or have that final decision making process. You feel like there's a point that you guys said it, I'm just something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any motion to accept the operating guidelines?
I'll move.
All right. And second.
I also.
And everyone in favor?
I. Oh,
Not you.
nah.
Any objections?
Oh, are these in the drive? Get out of them, but no, okay, there. Right?
Yes, I don't see them.
Make sure that one.
So I believe that we finished up last time the section 12, is that whatever people can bring us?
So that's why I have any notes for them.
All right, sounds good. We're starting at 13, and who wants to read it?
Meetings. The council shall hold a regular meeting at least once a month at a time and a place in the city that it designates. It shall adopt rules for the government of its members and proceedings. Meetings of the council shall be open to the public as provided in state law. The mayor or three councilors may call special meetings of the council in a manner prescribed by ordinance. One.
Any questions?
It shall adopt rules, meaning the council shall. Yes. I prefer that D, whatever, as opposed to the word it, just because I stumble sometimes with understanding what or who that it is when it's speaking of such.
And as prescribed by ordinance, is that municipal ordinance? Is that state ordinance?
So there, there's actually council rules of procedure, which I think were adopted by ordinance. And that's what puts in the condition of 3 councilors can contact the city administrator and say they want a special meeting. Yeah, so that's the way that works. Council rules of procedure are like an attachment to the resolution. So the resolution says these are the rules of the procedure. See attachment A in our adopted.
Other question, I guess. Are we nine today? There's usually 7 council members. Right,
Including
including the mayor. So is that like saying 3 people want to get together and just have a meeting and we're just gonna leave those other ones out because we don't agree with their policies or whatever?
3 of them have to call for a special meeting.
Exactly.
We would have to agree that a special meeting needs to happen.
Minimum of.
What if you
And
have
then
3 that are with each other?
Then it still have to have a quorum, and then it's all said and done. They call a special meeting, they still need a quorum
The whole.
of the whole council to make it actually happen.
Okay. You'd be happy if you.
Or alternately though, what if you had maybe a council that has a lot of time and they want to have a special meeting for anything, so this prevents just one councilor calling special meetings for. Being more deliberative, like if we're gonna get everyone together for an extra meeting, it's that important. Yeah.
Or the mayor can call it on their own.
What's the difference between an ordinance and a resolution?
I did look at this once. And I can get back to you on that because I don't want to.
I was reading this and I was reading this ordinance in the city rules for the council and I don't, unless the resolution is a statement and an ordinance requires something to happen.
Well, so ordinances are usually like rules for citizens, what they can and cannot do. So like dog at large is a ticket based on ordinance. You violated ordinance 805 by having your dog loose, or you violated ordinance whatever for dumping trash in your yard. So those are actionable. You had a citation. Typically, a resolution can be as simple as we as city council support Travel Lane County in their seeking a grant, and Travel Lane County is great. Sign city council. So that's the.
That seems separate to me.
That resolution is sort of like a proclamation.
Well,
Like both me and the speaker.
but I think the ordinance has some kind of rule that's.
That's what I assumed. I want to make sure.
The ordinance is more legal, resolution is more administrative. So. Yeah, we have to have not a public hearing, but Well, there's a process for passing either an ordinance or a resolution.
Right.
And the ordinance takes longer and requires posting and public comment and just different steps. And you also have to wait 30 days after it's approved before it's actually able to be followed or enforced, sorry. And that's why the council rules are an ordinance. And it's there used to be an old section of ordinances that managed council rules that was only like maybe 2 pages long, and we involved so League of Oregon Cities that came up, and they have a proposed all cities should kind of at least have this amount of ordinances for council rules to follow. We reviewed all those and adopted many of them, maybe a few got X, but so it became like a 30-page document versus a couple of pages. It's pretty significant. And I believe those are in our shared drive, aren't they, council rules? Yeah, they are. For this committee? Oh, yeah.
Actually, yes, they, well, procedure.
Yep, so if you want to look at it.
I had it off today, actually.
Oh, cool.
And do those prescribe the range of topics about which a special meeting can be called?
Yes, so the special meeting, work session,
Emergency.
and emergency meeting. So normally you have to have at least 24-hour notice for a special session. An emergency meeting could be done within hours, but there has to be legitimate reason, such as an evacuation from a fire.
What's left?
Yeah, like, yeah.
So confident.
Before I ask a question about process here, so I see that you've got this in your entertainment level. And you have 2 columns.
Yes.
And you have entries in here, so this is members of the committee have gone through and entered questions that they have in advance of.
That's actually what we're doing right now.
That's
Is-
not taking, that's what's not taking.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
So this side is the questions.
Okay.
What ordinance, that's what the one I asked, what ordinances prescribe how a special meeting is called? Municipal, state, and it actually changes answer over here.
Oh, wait, oh, so your view is different. So for some reason. So see how it will have a section here and then there's a section.
Are you in the copy document or the original?
Original.
Go to the copy,
Oh.
for whatever reason.
Council such as 13 was restricted to the meetings. How would should there be a place regarding the executive meetings, such as the emergency and all those others? Some of that's all included in the executive as well. Okay, that makes sense.
Does that include what?
Should it include executives? If that's
I don't-
emergency and vacancy, because like the other ones, emergency and. Says why would it be a good one?
Well, I think I think this is a catch-all, because it's saying. Special meetings, plural. Rather than a special meeting, singular. So an emergency meeting is a special meeting, a special meeting is a special meeting, a work session is a special meeting.
So it would include executive sessions.
Yes.
Okay,
That would also
gotcha.
be special. It's a land reading, otherwise it would be singular. If it was just addressing. Special, a special meeting.
Okay, in other words. They're normally scheduled according to the rules unless these either the mayor or 3 councilors. Call it, and that would apply to calling any meeting. I think is how it's.
Yeah, so 3 counselors could call for a work session. 3 counselors could call for an emergency session, 3 counselors could call for a special session.
Or an executive.
Or an executive session. But special sessions, plural, catch all, or all 4 of those types of. Extra meetings outside the regular meeting.
Is once, at least once each month? Should it say at least 2? I mean, you do that now anyway, right?
Actually, that's a good question. It comes up a lot, but we do hold 2. But by leaving it this way, it allows for the occasional. Like when it falls the day before the 4th of July or something like that, and then the council can decide. You know what, everybody's got a lot going on, let's skip a meeting this month.
They're pretty standard to stick one in December.
Then, yeah, often December or July. It's basically the only time. You know, or if there was an emergency like the fire, we called off a meeting once during the fire. Because everyone
Because
was
it- And you don't have a forum, then you don't get to have a meeting.
then we're not violating a rule. I leaving it at just.
Right, any additional questions about section 13? Hearing none, section 14, let's read that.
I'll go, right on the table, I suppose. Section 14, quorum, the majority of council shall constitute a quorum for its business, but a smaller number may meet and compel the attendance of absent members in a manner provided by ordinance.
I have a question.
That's pretty
Is
big.
that necessary? That's like, old school. I mean, when they used to literally send someone out on horse. To knock on someone's door and say, where aren't you at this? Did you forget there was a meeting tonight?
Yeah, I also feel like maybe I should be taken out because it gets really confusing, like we've had questions about quorum before, you know, if you have 2 councilors quit, now you're down to 5. Let's say 3 councilors quit, then you're down to 4. I guess then you would just barely have quorum. You know, the issue you've run into before, like with committees, where there are only 4 out of the 6 seats filled. So you've got 4 people. So, okay, 3, let's say 3. You've got 3 seats filled out of the 6. Can you still have a meeting or not? Because you would need 4 to pass something if you were considering that there should be 6 people, even though there aren't, there's only 3. Because there are 3 empty seats.
Wouldn't you
And each committee-
No, actually.
Depends on the committee.
Yeah, and maybe you do want it to be formed to be a majority of seated council. Would be quorum, so that if you have 2 open seats, you can still have a quorum, but you wouldn't want it to be like majority present necessarily. Because that's the other way in the majority, is majority. But if you have the majority of those present. that probably
Yes,
is-
and it's gone both ways on committees, because each committee resolution is a little bit different.
So that might be worth clarifying.
But this charter is specific to how the council
Right?
is managed or whatever.
Yeah.
Goes. So, well, this whole document is.
Is it, I mean, it does happen, is it worth it adding language in there of like seated or active or filled positions? Being your quorum, not,
Honestly, I think section 13 is a catch-all, that, you know, said it shall adopt rules for the government of its members and proceedings.
That's where you change it.
So I
Yeah,
think
it's probably already in the rules, isn't it?
it is.
So one of the things that just, well, it sounds archaic. Is that when we do, and we had events this a couple times in the past. When you have like empty seats and you don't think you have your quorum, you still do, governmental laws according to the board. You can still vote if you need to, but it compels you to not dilly dally about filling the seats. But you can still do the basic governance of your community. But the other thing that this does, while it sounds really archaic, is if you have members who are seated members, but who aren't attending. Then you have, because later on, you have a way to remove counselors who haven't attended so many meetings. What this does is give you the ability to reach out and say, whether it's by phone or text. You are missing a meeting, why are you not here? And then you have a paper trail that says. They said, or whatever, and they're not here, and then after so many absences, you can say. We would like to move to dismiss this counselor, so I don't know if. You know, this is part and parcel of that trail, even though it sounds archaic. You do have that responsibility as a council, to make sure that your elected members are coming to the table. I don't know that I don't know if you'd ever have someone who just choose not to attend and say, I don't want to do this anymore, and it might leave it at that.
Well, like when the Republicans went out of state.
Yeah,
But.
But that is like,
You don't necessarily write your charter career, all the.
no, you know it, you know, but that is what that
But I
means.
was wondering, because yeah, just from looking here, there's removal and censure rules, I'm sorry, there.
But I can see where it is, but a smaller number, it can be just deleted from that point on, the rest of us. Unless a form is covered someplace out.
It is, well, in the council rules of procedure, it is, but.
Yeah.
You know,
So the concept of excuse is a given.
Yeah. Okay, well, it's still, there's just like, still tasks.
Yeah. And then quorum of the rules is, 4 members of council, but vacancies in office do not count towards determining quorum.
Right, which means you have to have 4 or you don't.
Unless there's vacancy. Yeah. So if there was a vacancy, then you have 5 and your quorum would be 3. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so in the rules, I'm looking at the where council rules of procedure. Oh, yeah.
Wait, so it says states vacancies,
So the language is, the members of the council are the 6 city councilors and mayor. 4 members of the council shall constitute a quorum. Vacancies in office do not count towards determining a quorum.
So to me, that means. If there's a vacancy, it doesn't matter, you still have to have one,
stop that for.
Oh,
have to have four.
right.
Well, to me.
Well, but this is, the title is quorum and the quorum is required. So it's saying the vacancies in office now count towards determining. Okay, I guess I read it the other way.
So I think that's that language that I
No,
know.
yeah, yeah, this is titled quorum, so reading that, it's like saying, determine what quorum is or vacancies.
So that's that language that we shared with the League of Oregon Cities when we had 2 people out, and I said, well, what do we do? It was only for a short period of time, and they said, well, that language allows you to then reduce your quorum. Because it's a true vacancy, as long as you're in the process of filling the vacancy, but that. In her words, but you should limit your business to only the essential things. So you wouldn't want to take up something that is brand new for fear that would look like you're rocking the boat a little bit, but things that have to be done, you could still vote on.
But with 2, you would still have one. Cause there would be time.
Right.
You have, one, two, three.
You could still hear it, yeah, and so my concern was that we have more than that. Coming out, and we wanted to know ahead of time what happens, you know, what, do you just not meet, do you just not? This is,
Because then you don't meet section 13, because you didn't have more than 2 meetings, you can't meet, because you don't.
so that's why when I read this, when I read this, I read it the other way, that says if you have vacancies, then they don't count towards your quorum. You reduce it, so if 4 is your quorum.
Good by that.
Yeah, that would be a good clarification, Steve.
That's
Sounds
what-
like that.
Yeah, sounds like council rules might need to be looked at. That'll be our next.
I've seen many legal documents that have an example.
Yeah.
For example, yes. Or the language that's very telling you how to interpret it.
Yeah.
We've got so many things that, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, because it, reading this, you could read it both ways, you can read it both ways.
Is there a section on quorum in this document that I think? What is? Oh, no, it's, you're in it.
Yeah.
We were in quorum, okay.
I have a question if, and it's a little bit hard to hear everybody, but I wonder, if there is a vacancy, is there a way to say that that counts not for nor against it? The quorum? You know, like, I guess that goes back to what James was saying, and I'm not sure if I understood the conversation in the room very well, but, you know, let's say there are 2 vacancies, then we're reduced to, you know, to 4 counselors, then how do you determine the majority? What determines the majority in that situation?
The way I'm reading it is just to leave 4 under the council rule, but that's just my opinion.
I read it different.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think verbal, I mean, it's plain language, it can definitely be read either way. So it does need to be clarified.
But we are talking about 2 different documents, so right now we should only be focused on this.
But this document is fully relying on that document, it goes on to actually quote that clause. So I think the charter's the place to start with a very clear. Instruction of what you want.
absolutely.
So as we move through this is the question process for me, so this is the point where we identify all the things that are questioned, right?
Yes.
And then the second time around, we will identify resources to clarify those questions.
No, that's no to.
Okay,
So yeah, if there are, the second time around is when we're going to say, I think we should change it in this way.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, in the League of Oregon Cities, suggested charter, city charter, their quorum reads, a majority of the council members is a quorum to conduct business. In the event of a vacancy due to resignation or other events, the quorum is reduced accordingly. In the event of an absence, a smaller number may meet and compel attendance of absent members as prescribed by their council rules. So, you know, they've added a little more language to that to make it. And then they go on to add indices that with a majority is more than half of the council. For a 7-member council, a quorum is 4 or more. For example, if a 7-member council has 1 vacant position due to resignation or other event, the quorum remains at 4. There are 2 vacant positions, the quorum is reduced to 3. If a 5-member council has 1 vacant position, the quorum remains at 3. If there are 2 vacant positions, the quorum is reduced to 2. So it gives that example.
Wow,
And
it's 2 people could make decisions for an entire city.
No, there's a 3 of 5.
Well,
Well,
but
if you have to say-
it's normally a 5-member council, like
Yeah.
Westford.
Yeah.
So Westford's got 5. And if they were down 2.
And 2 could.
right,
then-
But think about it, to conduct city business, you want that to be the case, what if we are in an emergency? What if they're an emergency, if you want to evacuate, or, I guess you were in this position, so we don't have to really that. But yeah, like you still want to keep business going, you still have to operate the city, so if it's not like. Other than, you know, compelling situation, I think you do want to allow, and for whatever reason.
Kind of sounds like from what you just read that they are covering though, that there's a difference between a vacancy and somebody just not showing up.
Yes.
Because what we don't want to do is have several councilors just decided, well, let's just not show up. And-
Yeah, right, that's that. And so if you read that section 14 in with a positive spin, as opposed to, let's get on our horse and go get somebody, which
Right,
I immediately think of, right? It gives you the ability to say, we need to have forum. We're gonna find out why he's not there. Let's get him
If
there.
you can't make it in person, did you say, just
Zoom it, you know, later to have you answer. So it gives the council that authority to do that without.
just
Without waiting, yeah, so. You can look at it.
So then that would lean towards keeping that language about the compelling,
Mhm.
but then clarifying. the points.
yeah.
yeah, so a good question would be, how do we clarify it?
Yeah, and that's a pretty long, so I don't want that in there, but
Yeah.
I think Barbara's language like that, but then. I really like those examples, those moving into the rules, so you have it there, so very.
Majority of council shall be posted forum per council rules. Because if they adopt the correct kind of ruling, then.
So that actually brings up a really good point. Council rules can be changed so much easier than a charter. Yes. So having it spelled out in the county rules, with all the examples, is a better place, because that could be changed a lot easier if needed.
Right, as long as it
doesn't violate the charter, right,
Yeah, right. But, and I do like that this adds. You know, in the event of a vacancy or resignation, or other event, the quorum is reduced accordingly.
I think that's the kind of phrasing you want to insert.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Good issue then. Yeah, which some.
And Kathy, in the notes, you'll see that I put citation, to the side of insert citation,
Okay.
so you can write on it. All right, any additional questions with section 14? All right, section 15. Going around the table, you want to read this one, Kathy?
Section 15 journal. The council shall cause the journal of its proceedings to be kept. On the request of any of its members, ayes or nays upon any question before it shall be taken, and a record of the vote entered in the journal.
Curious why they didn't use the word minutes, it's not like the word minutes is.
And cause a journal.
It's an old language.
Well, originally, the first charter was written in like 1942.
You think the word minutes would have been around in 1940, but maybe not.
But this is an opportunity to change it.
We probably literally had it.
Probably was a journal.
Actually,
Yeah.
So. I mean, I think we all, I understand it, but I'd like to see it clearer. Just as a record, this says a record of council meetings must be kept in a manner prescribed by your council rules and the laws of the state of Oregon. Does the charter have to say what that includes? This says ayes and nays. I would assume that includes
And
that,
if you're gonna do that, you might as well have the abstentions in there as well.
and they always should be.
Because who's not playing those?
The way I understand this is that it's basically saying that a record of each person's name and how they voted.
only upon request.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So does that mean you don't put it in there? The journal seems like it would collect everything.
Yeah, it's available to people upon request,
Right.
but it's in there forever.
Right, I actually think that on the request, I'm kind of reading that, like, any counselor can ask for any. Question before the council to be taken up and. Like to take the temperature of where your council's at, because council doesn't get to deliberate outside the council. So, but following Robert's rules, you have to get a second in order to bring something to a vote, right? So what's the practice right now? How does council?
We don't usually call for ayes and nays unless we are taking a vote.
Taking a motion or making a motion, you can vote, right? But this seems to allow for it, which I can understand. That would be like, say the council's in deliberation over something and trying to figure out where people are at, and that'd be a way any counselor can ask. I don't really like that. I just.
Yeah, I think it's saying that. So some of the minutes, some of the old journal, just say the motion passed 6-1.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't say specifically who voted each way. But it is in our rules too, that the council member can say. I want, I want to record it per person, poll.
Oh, it's not just. Don't.
Mhm.
Oh,
No, there's 4 ayes and 3 nays.
oh,
There's not.
was each person
Four.
what it was?
Council rules actually says you have to list the name and the vote. In the
And
minutes.
is that on?
Right, but some of the.
I think
say
it's
some of the old
somebody
ones-
requested, I'm not sure that it's a given. But, I took forget what I read today,
So then I
but it
guess.
was saying that you can request that names and votes be given, or, so I don't know whether that meant it's given all the time, or just when somebody requests, let's put it out there, or if there's a written vote, then you don't know who, unless somebody says, I want to know the name.
Yeah, in practice, we are doing that now, in our minutes, but some of the old minutes, it just says 51.
Right.
Then 72.
Which can be all you need,
Yeah,
unless somebody really wants to know who said what.
Maybe this was, back when we had handwritings.
Was journal synonymous with meeting minutes? I mean, it's basically the same thing. So I would think just changing the wording, and you're gonna keep the record of the minutes anyway, and everything's recorded as well.
We're gonna modernize this,
Yeah,
basically.
Yeah.
Everyone needs to be modernized.
Minutes do have to meet a state standard as well.
yeah.
yeah, League of Oregon Cities recommended language said. And in accordance with state law.
Yeah.
That's interesting what you just said. So this little, what is going on, footnotes. Said that the Oregon Public Meetings Law, which is 192.650, requires cities to provide for sound, video, digital recording of women taking of written minutes. Okay, you kind of know that. The section provides an independent requirement for council records and authorizes the council to adopt requirements in addition to those in state law. So we have some latitude as to being able to say, here in Oak Ridge, we want it done this way.
Yes, I mean,
Right.
if you're in a big city, you might have minutes that are literally verbatim, every single word that is said.
Right.
Pain in the butt, but
Mhm.
if you have somebody that's their entire job, then.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Have a court recording.
Right.
You doing that?
Smoking a reach means you.
I'm loving, wish I could do it. When you do the alphabet and sign language with both hands at the same time.
That's cool.
To take notes on the video back stuff.
That's why I'm asking.
If it's written down, no, it's about, which kind of supposed to be, but not that.
Yeah, it strikes me that this section. Where we're talking about. Updating it for technology. That. When debates have been taking place in council. most of the time for citizens, they're not gonna watch the whole council recording. It's in a large context. So there could very well be an option to allow each side of an issue to say, hey, we want to be able to record a 2-minute synopsis of why we're advocating for this. And that would be posted on the city's website so that the citizens could go, oh, I understand that rationale. Oh, I understand that rationale. And so there's an opportunity to not only record what happened in session, but to facilitate a springboard for engagement post session. And
Yeah.
that,
See, and I think pre-session, you should have, if somebody's got strong opinions about something, they should have them out there so that they can encourage people to show up, and try and be public. If they can actually speak during a council session, which doesn't always happen very well, so. That would be ideal there, because then they could actually look at, okay, and then they can find their information and come prepared
there's that sort of.
to advocate for it.
Mhm.
I think they here talking about citizens, and I think he's talking about council.
Council, yeah, I said council should do it.
Yeah.
Set it out there, citizens could see it prior to the meeting. Say, oh, that's where they're standing. They can look up their information, if they wanted to come and do public comment, they can have it ready to go to support. That council or say, this is why I'm totally against what you're trying. Is this like having a voting record of, like, or you voted against this kind of thing all the time, and then you voted for it, and you have a record, so maybe when there's a re-election, you go, well, I'm not voting for them because I didn't like the way they voted, that kind of an idea. So you can have something to look at and see voting on the streets to, yeah, like that.
I think the information is in there, that it's the individual citizen with group of citizens to go back and tell us on the voting record. I don't think that's the job of the city to do that, but it is the job of the city to make sure that it is recorded, captured,
Right.
and captured appropriately, yeah. And so this section of journal, to me, I'm just looking at it indicating that in our charter, we would like to have all of our minutes, all of our meetings recorded in writing, and then it has to include the yeses and the nos and any question that they voted upon. And that record will be entered into this says journal, but it will be in the minutes. I don't think it is talking about any more than that. It's just, an indication that we are agreeing that they need to be written for posterity.
If it was in just a journal, and it was just the yays and nays, it would be a lot less time consuming to go through
Right,
and
but
see and do.
But now there's the Oregon law, so that's the piece I was gonna add, that in different places it said, the charter has said. In accordance with the law, maybe this is where it needs to have that reference, in accordance with Oregon law. Cause it might change in time, who knows what the next technology is gonna be.
That's true. Or what it might not be, so say for example, we decide that we no longer need to have written amendments, because we have a video and we have a tape recording. And say in 100 years, we don't have that ability. I don't know why.
We are progressing.
But we have a bigger. It is the institutional memory, and hopefully, the video hasn't melted and the tape recorders haven't eaten the tape and all these things, so you have to. And I think that's why it's the journal.
I think of the receipts with the ink, the bits of paper that were served around time.
They don't fire around anymore.
We do. Back there. But I see why, 'cause so this was written back in the day when cassette tapes were probably all you had. And so you If you know everybody, you can hear their voices and say, oh, it's Jan Hooker. But if you don't know Jan Hooker, you might not recognize the voice, hence the need for writing in Jan Hooker voting for. Mayor.
Instead of getting a public comment and things is like, I don't remember where I live again. Forget my address, and I've been there a year now, but it should be like. But it's not, because I spent like 7 years first.
I know we're not making a decision now, but I think the suggestion of putting it in accordance with state law and council rules of procedure takes care of it.
Yeah, well, I mean, would it need to specify though, like, public meeting or? Public records law, or just in accordance with state law?
I think if you refer to state law, then it, yeah, just by reference, it, yeah. I think that applies.
Because I wanted to ask if, instead of repeating that throughout this document in every section, like in one place in the beginning. All these things need to be in accordance with state law.
And that's kind of unsettling because you can't have a charter that
That's.
is against state law.
Right,
But I do think sometimes those references are helpful to just flag that there's very specific rules around this type of. You know.
Yeah.
Those are asterisk
Yeah.
things that you stick next to one, so that people go, oh, that's in accordance with state law. Oh, in accordance.
Or we should review state law.
Yeah.
And the updates. Yeah, because it was just recently that that state law changed to include the requirements because of COVID. So.
So wouldn't it include like ORS statute, blah, blah, blah?
Well, no, I wouldn't use the word, ORS has changed.
Oh, no, okay. And the other thing, not to throw, I see the worm in the hole here,
is, you know, saying that, oh, well, our charter always will follow, will not. Be in conflict with the state constitution or any rules, is that Oregon is a huge home rule, strong home rule state. Which means that it gives cities and municipalities a lot of freedom to be able to make rules and make suggestions for their communities. Within, and kind of through the Constitution. If the Constitution of the state of Oregon doesn't specifically address it, the community can address it. That's why we're a home rule state. So, you know, not that I think we would get that deep into it, but that is the reason why we have that ability to create our own charter that fits ourselves, as long as it doesn't violate it. And that's why the state constitution tries to stay as broad as it possibly can, so that we can make our rules.
the modernization can still be run.
Absolutely.
I'm concerned about, after reading it for the 60th time, I think. Upon the request of any of its members, the ayes and nays shall be taken. So if nobody requests it, it's not taken. Or is that meaning?
We do that now. But. Probably in this. Few years ago, we just put the number. The vote was 4-3. The vote was 5-2.
Well, that's what this is saying, ayes and nays. It's not saying you have to tell who said what. But if somebody has to say they want it done in order for it to happen, if somebody doesn't request it, does that mean it's not voted on?
Right, so I think that it does need to be clarified and aligned with what current practice is.
Yeah.
I
Because it really
see.
does sound, what they're doing is pre-polling before you're about to vote. I want to see the ayes and nays right now, but we haven't voted yet. Right. Because that kind of.
That's why I was asking, that's what I was asking, like, oh, is that allowed and is that done? That's why I was asking that, right? Up front, because it kind of reads like,
Yeah, it does. Yeah. But I've never seen.
maybe it was.
Well, I do have to say it can kind of happen, but not in such a formal way, like how many are aye and how many are nay. During discussion, so after a motion and a second, during discussion, a counselor can say, I really don't support this idea, and here's my reason why. Or I really do like this idea, and here's my reason why. So you're kind of giving a heads up to everyone.
Right, but you're
But
not
you're
forcing
not
other
saying-
people to tell you.
Yeah.
Where they
Exactly.
read them.
Exactly.
I'm not sure anybody would do it. Well, I've never seen that, I don't know. So it makes you wonder. There's maybe because of the years between when this was written and when we're reading it, that it had a different. A different.
It could have had difference, yeah.
Because it sure sounds like that there.
But anyways, it just needs to be one.
Definitely public meetings law has updated what's here.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean, not public meeting, public records, the records that you keep are wired. And law now to be way more than what this says.
So this needs to catch up to it, the language.
It kind of sounds like they did keep minutes on the meetings, but it just wasn't mandatory that they kept any record who voted any particular thing.
it may have been, yeah, it may have been a strategic thing, motion passed.
Yeah.
It doesn't state if it was 4-3.
And I heard several emotions.
I read how the motion is being read now, prior to release. Come from the last council meeting, and I think that's a great improvement. That way, when the city recorder is making that note for the minutes, the city recorder has got it straight.
Okay, we're ready to move on. 6.
We're, this is the only section that talks about recording, relative to the meetings, I believe. So what I was asking, and Jerry, what you were asking as well, of, right now, Oregon public meeting law might constrain the use of technology to facilitate citizen, or might be construed to constrain the use of technology to facilitate citizen engagement. But there may be an opportunity to use the charter to open up avenues for citizen engagement. And clarify that indeed, that's what we're intending to do, is to open up opportunities for direct counselor to citizen engagement, and here are procedures that technology can be utilized that way. So that's the way I said, is there any reason to provide in the charter a post-meeting opportunity for a council member to speak to a particular issue? And then you ask, well, heck, is there a reason to do a pre-meeting? And I think that's something to think about, is with are there reasons that we may want to do that in the charter? An additional question that comes up for me is that this is talking about counselors. The council shall cause adjourning of its proceedings. And then it's talking about the votes of the council members. But what it's not, other than it's part of the proceedings, it's not necessarily talking about the city manager. So there are, for instance, line item budget issues where, right now, James, if you're wanting people to understand, here's what this budget item is about. How can you engage with the public on it?
So typically for an issue, I'll be writing an agenda bill, it's called, that goes in the council packet, which is then made public prior to the meeting. So I explain what the issue is, what the options for council are, and suggested motion or motions. So that's what people would look at.
So it's called an agenda bill,
On the agenda bill,
so it explains.
what the issue is. What the options are. And what fiscal impacts would be.
And do those those council packets, when council approves minutes at the next meeting, does that include the previous packet?
No, council does not approve the,
No, not saying that they approve the packet, but does that get incorporated into the minutes to be saved as a package? This is what the business was done.
in practice, we do, but there's no requirement
Okay,
to save those.
they do say different documents, maybe different folders and whatnot. So I know definitely they post before meetings, we should see them there. Yeah, I've never gone back and tried to search an old council packets.
I have, and something, I think I.
Yeah, I've searched old minutes,
Yes.
but yeah, that would be a way to kind of preserve that record.
Now they do.
Ask, so for starters, we've only had one city councillor who, well, Brian was the first city councillor who started posting the packets on the city website.
Yeah, I remember for the city council.
So before that, yeah, they were limited to council and or specific members of the community who had requested to be able to see them ahead of time. They weren't just like openly available for anyone to have access.
Except here or at the library.
Yeah.
Here.
Which I don't know the technology piece of that, you know, things are just kind of so much easier to share and stuff. But it's a good practice.
Yeah, because it's, and so are you posting the packets on the city website?
No, Jackie.
I mean, okay.
Yeah, they're there.
And your,
Yeah.
yeah, so,
Yeah.
so they're there, just still.
But they're
And we
there.
do save them
before
afterwards.
meeting.
We do, yes. we-
You know, they get saved on the city website, searchable by the public, or they just say, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, they're in the view details section. If you go to government and then agendas and meetings. Then you look by the date and view details, that's where you'll find the links to the packet.
Yeah, that's a good practice. I don't know if you want to go in the charter. Because in the charter, you want to be clear about how far back you go. But maybe, I mean, it's probably rules. But that's a good way, but that's the city administrator sharing their stuff beforehand. I think what you're talking about is counselors garnering, you know, public interest in an issue on their side. I definitely see the utility before a meeting, but once the decision has been come to and a vote was happened by the council, having something post meeting could be just, that's like politics. And not necessarily like something that's gonna advance the.
Well,
decision,
and
right?
sometimes post discussion, a decision hasn't been made.
Right, but then the decision's made, so
Right.
they get sort of before next meeting. But would you want that to be part of the official minutes though?
And that's where, when I look at this section, this is the only section that I'm seeing talk about recordings, talk about records. So would I want that to be part of the official minutes? I don't have an opinion on that, but would I love to see, I have to be careful here because I'm not wanting to advocate for any specific proposal. So I need to, no, I do want to preserve that format. I look at what, for instance, what's his name, Audrey Tang with, the digital minister for Taiwan has gotten a ton of citizen engagement in a way that has actually reduced the contentiousness by allowing, for instance, a municipal administrator to say, hey, I'm gonna, here is an easy way to film a 1 to 2 minute explanation of what each of these line items are on the budget. So that instead of having to show up, James, at the council and have the only record of the rationale and the impact being in a meeting. At which point the vote is taken. And instead of people not, including counselors, not being able to actually go, well, wait a minute. Let me sit with that a little bit, because I'm not quite sure of the fiscal impact. By making it very public. Not public where you go to the library to get it, not public where it's questionable how to find it. It's very clear, and it is basically permanently stored in a distributed network, so that that sort of statement, if someone is on Facebook going, I don't know what this stupid line item is, the city's wanting to waste my money again. Someone can go, wait, here's the explanation. And I think there's unnecessary dissension.
So methods of transparency.
Yes.
Yeah.
Communication,
Yeah.
My simplistic perspective, need a real good detail, but it doesn't have to be a real long detail. You know,
Keep it simple, stupid. That's
Yeah.
what I used to say.
short and sweet.
This is a good discussion, like this brings into question, like how much the city resources should be used for that. So. Yeah, like. Is it only is it only anybody putting forward an issue that actually makes it to an agenda bill? That should be able to use the city resources to post it to the city website explaining something? Or does it, yeah, so that's kind of where you kind of get that stuff, and I did just look. It does not say anything about packets in the rules of procedure. And I think it's a good practice, the transparency around the packets about the council consideration of rules is codifying how they're used and posted.
And it is covered in public records laws, because anything that I send out, via email to council. Someone can request that through public records.
Yeah.
Requests.
But a FOIA is a long.
And it costs money.
Process, and so, yeah, I guess preempting and requiring transparency.
I remember back starting on the admin committee with the COVID and all that stuff. I had learned about the ability to actually go before a council meeting, look at the agenda and find the packets that all the information that the councilors were getting. And that was through Don teaching me. So I think that, it's, because of your willingness to educate and be transparent, I was able to participate. It's the same reason why I would not run for a city council seat, is because I was thinking, I'm not smart enough.
You just didn't have all the information that everyone else was getting, yeah.
I'm smart enough, I just didn't know, how to care.
So I have a clarifying question. Are you talking kind of like along the lines of maybe tutorials, like people are just creating, here's how, or a tutorial on what the budget.
That is precisely what I'm talking about,
Okay.
that, or,
Here's how.
yes,
The public record request, or here's how you can do it.
yes, yeah, it, look. Maybe I'll have some-
Yeah, just using that term, tutorial, it wrapped up everything that y'all was just talking about into a simple. Solution from a grain to accept the topic that I understood.
Yeah,
I like that idea, but I don't know that it needs to be like a permanent charter.
mhm.
But maybe that's where a practice that goes through the council, yeah. And maybe making some of those requirements, because right now you have a city administrator that's doing that extra bit. I think under, like you're saying, under Oregon law, you definitely don't have to. Like, well, they can FOIA me if they want this beforehand, or it's at the library. So that may be something the council wants to put in rules sooner than later, and then your city administrators on how to do that.
But to kick it down to like the students that you were referring to, that would be a possibility, you know, as a statement that any educational entity in government can create tutorials with approval of council or whatever. Kind of a program. Or, you know,
Can that be on the website and you have like a little how-to button up there to get to a tutorial to help you find your way on the website, because I quite often.
Now, we could actually add it like here in our guidelines that this committee makes all these videos. That's what I was looking at it. I was gonna ask them, is that you don't want to overburden. You know, so
You put just being students, yeah, you put something in the charter, then it's a must do, not a.
And that's,
What it can do.
and that is actually,
Fast.
that's what facilitated a lot of what has happened in Taiwan. Is because there was a protest movement that had it written into the charter.
Mm.
So the priority to open up government to that extent was way off the radar screen, and no way we would do that. The amount of budget that would be required to do that, while you're talking about this amount of resources. And by doing, once it was in the charter, they had to, and by doing it, there was a huge reduction in other budget requirements, because there was so much more citizen involvement. So they were able to cut costs in other areas that more than provided for what they had become obligated to do. So it's a real life example, and for instance, how they handled the pandemic response was different from any other country on the planet because of that openness. Anyway.
Yeah, and we're working on the strategic plan. I help facilitate that process, so we're doing a bunch of research, and there's cities that have a scorecard for their strategic plans on their website, and it shows what those goals are and progress towards those goals, and so they're open to the public. So the public can see, like, are we just stalling out on this goal, or what progress has been made? But again, resources to maintain that, this is resources.
Do that. And I think, you know, I have heard, there are other communities, that I don't know that word required, but by traditionally, their counselors are, we'll say, required to meet with the city administrator after the packet comes out, one-on-one, before every meeting. So that they should have questions about this, but listening to all this conversation, that could be recorded with
Yes.
one person, or not even with one person, just, and then given to everyone. That would be one way to do it, but I mean, it depends, I agree with what Don said, we have to be careful about how much do you want to actually put in the charter, but what could we recommend as far as practice in our council rules and procedures? Which I think would help folks, like when you said, I can't be a counselor. Or someone says, I don't want to do that much, how would I know? Well, in our rules and procedures, here is a guideline for what your responsibility and the requirements would be. You're gonna increase how many meetings you're gonna be attending. So you're gonna have to meet with the city administrator, you're gonna have to do this. That may be a way to do that, which to me, although it's a little bit more clunkier, then speaks to the transparency that you're talking about, because the more our city councilors are in key and understand what they're about to look at, the more they can clearly communicate to the community.
Yes.
So maybe there's a different way to do that.
And as you were talking, I was just thinking of a whole separate. You know how our YouTube channel has all the meetings?
Yeah.
We could have a whole section for tutorials, I think. Yeah. And even counselors could just make tutorials on how certain parts and functions work. Maybe even as requested by a citizen. Like,
Yeah.
how does this work? And then a counselor could Do a video and answer it.
And there's the tutorial piece, and there's also the, James, exactly what you were mentioning is in the content of those agenda bills. What's the fiscal implication?
Right.
Why is this necessary? What does this mean? And I love what you were mentioning, Kathy, of, there are other cities that require that sort of meeting with the city administrator prior. And I love how the brainstorming together of what's the implication of when we're talking about records.
Right.
Brought to mind, well, that could be a requirement that at least one city councilor meets with the city administrator, that's recorded and then uploaded for any other councilors to ask, and if any other councilor wants to meet, then they can do so similarly. But that's the sort of reduction in, and this goes back to budgeting questions, you know, if to have transparency, there's that kind of a requirement, the moment one is using media, that's a reduction in hours done by saying, hey, the only requirement is that it happened once and it's recorded once and made available once. With options for other counselors to meet subsequently.
So I just had one thing, I had pop up, and I was thinking of the call from the recorder. Collecting the ayes and nays, and is there a process where one person gets asked and then in the next motion that gets voted on, the beginning vote comes from? Because I did notice that was a pattern, and I've noticed a few times that it the same person got started with the next time
Yeah.
when it was supposed to be somebody different.
Required, so there's a list and you start with the next one down each time, so
Okay.
not everybody is the first one to be asked.
Okay.
Last one, yeah.
That's not mentioned in this.
You know, I don't know, if everything goes with the city, I had seen it written down before. That's what they do.
I wonder if it's something that's in like either a public records or just laws or whatever that's practices.
Yeah.
It's definitely not documented in, to my knowledge, in any of our, either this or in the council rules.
That's correct.
Being a personnel.
I see it.
I saw it in the city recorders, there's a city recorders association
That has policies and procedures.
and I think that's the best practice.
It's probably just that practice, because if you made it required, then you could say, oh, vote was taken in the wrong order, vote doesn't count.
Yeah, that's true. That's very
And
That'd be a pain in the committee.
Oh, huge, yeah.
But it also starts the mindset of, you know, somebody that has passion about whatever subject, and they're like, oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And then that next round, or the next person has that influence or that impact or that whatever it may be. So that was one of my concerns. And I think what triggered that was the transparency thing when I started thinking of, gosh, clear back when James Apple was alive and I was on the budget committee. The money for animals was $2,500 a year, and now to this day, it's down 400, if not below. And none of the community knew. Nobody knew. So, except for my big mouth now. I'm not there saying, yeah, did you know that already? You know, because I want some funding for animal services, but that's on another thing, that's not sure. But it triggered.
Okay, well.
FYI.
We are so we are at time, we had some great discussions this evening about record keeping and transparency. And forum, we've got a lot of questions raised and some resources with the League of Oregon Cities. Thank you, Kathy. And you'll put that citation in.
Yeah, so you
Great.
and I all need to.
Sounds perfect. All right.
Sorry, can I squeeze one thing in before we go back? I think it's a suggestion to go in this section. I think there should be something that said there shall be the opportunity for public comment at every meeting open to the public. Because it's not in charter, and that could go in section 13, because that covers meeting. Or it could be added as section 19. But I think that there should be something that says public comment should be made available at every meeting open to the public.
I think that for sure is something that's covered in both meetings law. You know, again,
That's great, but I just think charter looks better. I think it should be in the chart. I think it's that.
The public meeting law, so let's change the writing pattern.
Because in public meeting law, in a work session, the council, is it only council that says no public comment, or is it meeting law that says no public comment?
Well, that's why I said
Yeah.
public comment should be available at every meeting open to the public.
Mm.
So if it's an
Got it.
executive session where the public can't go.
They can't even go.
Right.
Well,
but you're talking about a work session where typically we do not allow public comment.
Well, we are tomorrow night. Public comment is available at a work session tomorrow.
see, that motivates me to attend.
I think so.
And I think that needs to be. I
That's
mean,
fine.
while I understand what you're saying, but I would advocate to leave that open so that you can choose to have public comment. Or you can choose not to, depending on the topic.
Yeah, but if you get a bunch of assholes on council that are like, I'm so sick of public comment, no more public comment, any meetings.
We can't do that, it's against public law, it's against Florida public law.
Right, but then you could get clever and say, you know what, every meeting. We'll have our regular meeting once a month, that's all we have to do. And now, next week, we're gonna have a work session.
So no public comment.
Yeah, but you can't, in a work session, you can't vote on anything, so you wouldn't be able to move forward the business of the city anyway. You still have to be in the regular session.
But it's happened, like, to give public comment, you have to notify 24 hours ahead of time, or, you know, so I do think it's worth putting in there, 'cause you never know, you know. And I think those mechanisms, this is the way to make sure there's transparency in the government, I think that is important, so.
There's valuable experience with input available. It's not that an individual may want to arouse or control or, you know, manipulate a topic or whatever. It's that they have valuable input that could benefit the city.
Well, and for example, the school board moved to the public comment only being after the meeting. And the attendance level has gone way down, fairness. Yes, they're having, because they don't respond, right? Because you're having to sit for an entire meeting and then give your public comment.
And then it has nothing to do with anything they voted on,
Yeah.
and then they do voting that is just interesting, ridiculous.
So when I'm in practice,
Means that care what you can say.
well,
I mean, I think
it does.
$10,000.
And so I do agree that codifying the charter of the public comments is good.
I like.
Yeah.
Thank you for adding it. I had put that under the section 13 notes, so if anyone is looking for that and sees the online recording, that's there it is. All right, so with that meeting adjourned, and let's touch base with the time we are meeting next month. So we need to verify that we anticipate that for. And then the meeting's good.
Really, my phone back on.
March 8th from 6 to 7:30.
I got it booked on my calendar.
Again, we want to anticipate being able to make that.
Comes in city charter standing. Okay.
All right, sounds great. Thank you.
Yes. I'll probably call you time to time, I'll be here next month, the NDC, but
All right.
I'll try to
Friday and today, everyone.
Thank
and thanks for bringing this thing.
Came back on, came back down.
When you become a therapist. She quit in 2 days.
Connection there?
Thanks for coming to see us.
Yeah, so back, you want my, yeah.
Oh, and I just emailed to.
And then they.
Thanks, thanks, Sure. Thanks.
Oh, because of what?
I'm still.